Walter, you chaired the Public Works Finance Committee meeting at which this was discussed, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
The same question that Sue has raised was brought up at Public Works Finance about the stairs, and I will give Les credit for providing the pretty much identical answer we heard a week ago. Comments regarding people going to walk it anyway, that kind of thing. The question was asked that if you put maybe a pipe barrier or something at the east end of the existing sidewalk where the new ramp takes off, effectively saying the sidewalk doesn't keep going. Why wouldn't that work? It's not like a business where you walk up to the front door, in my opinion, and there's a stair, and if you don't want to take the stair, you have the ability to take this circuitous ramp that is wheelchair accessible, et cetera, to get up there. With this, you've got to actually walk down 150 or 200 feet to get to the stairs, where if you just went ahead and turned, it wouldn't take you hardly much longer to do it. Just personal opinion to Les's thing about students are going to walk down the muddy slope. My answer is let them. You show it's not the sidewalk goes around. I hate to spend the extra $8,000. We've got $18,694.50 from Walmart, and my belief is, Les, correct me if I'm wrong, that amount was derived by an early estimate by your department that that's what it would cost to put a ramp and stair down at the far end of the existing sidewalk, and upon design found that the ramp part wouldn't work well. So you came back with this design. Is that correct?
Yeah, the design has changed somewhat from that original estimate, and that estimate was based on, a pre-design idea. Mm-hmm. And, as can sometimes occur as you get into the detail and figure out that with the grades being what they are, you might have to extend a little further than you anticipated. Yeah, that does tend to add cost. And so I think that's what we're seeing there is, instead of the 18, we're looking more about 26 if you looked at the original concept. Obviously, a little price escalation over the last couple of years as well adds to that. But it's a combination of those factors.
Yeah, if I may, you were confined between the existing sidewalk and what you call Montgomery Drive in terms of length of area to work to try to get down off of that elevation.
Yeah, one of the early concepts was a kind of a zigzag ramp approach through there. I think that one went away fairly early. But yeah, there's been a few changes, obviously.
If I make, Les, what is the ownership of the property we're looking at? The university leases to the mall, obviously the asphalt parking lot behind Office Depot, and then they come south until they run into, this is a question, they run into ITD right-of-way?
Essentially, the state right-of-way is generally in this vicinity. It runs down through here. Okay. So everything south of that would be state highway right-of-way. With the recently donated property from the university acceptance by the city's street right-of-way for Hatley Way generally would run across in this area and then come down to that same state right-of-way line.
So the turn in off of the Pullman Highway is into city right-of-way, Hatley Way, and you then turn west
on city
in front of U-Haul, still on city right-of-way.
Yeah, all this concrete street section is city right-of-way.
Okay.
All right. And then the line runs about here, and everything east of that is University of Idaho property.
And just to finish, and there's a need for a driveway cut to go up the old Montgomery driveway?
Yeah, it's something we have talked about a bit here internally. That access area will serve a couple of purposes. One is that there will be city utilities up through there for the water system coming down from A Street to the back of the well number 9 area. So it is an access point. Also, there are some franchise utilities up that driveway that use that area for access, is my understanding, to some of those facilities. So as is typical with access drives of that nature, We did include a driveway approach across that area. Still all ADA compliant, pretty typical as we're dealing with driveways and sidewalks passing through those areas.
Thank you, ma'am.
Other questions? Yes, Tom.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think if we don't do the stairway, folks that park in those last 8 or whatever number of spots that are there, 8 to 10 spots, if they end up on that sidewalk and start heading west, and then get to the end of the sidewalk, then they're going to, either walk down the thing just because they're already there, or they'll have to turn back around and head back. I think probably if we don't put the stairs, we'll probably have to put some dissuasive plantings at the far end, or a railing or something to discourage people from going that way. And I think also at the intersection of the two path pieces, perhaps just a sign that says, sidewalk continues this way. It doesn't continue the other way, or something to that effect, just to kind of, prevent people from walking down and then saying, well, forget it, I'm just going to run down the hill. I can be persuaded that way. I think if we do have sidewalk, or if we do have stairs, then we potentially have an issue for winter maintenance that might not be the most desirable thing for us, but at least we're dealing with a way to help people down there. Maybe there's a nicer way to leave that slope so it's not just a muddy hillside.
Other discussion? How would the council like to proceed? Walter?
Tom's got a point about snow. We have an agreement, or the mall has agreed, correct me, to plow that sidewalk from Farm Road for the length of the mall property.
That is correct.
But if there are stairs down there, there's no arrangement that the city or the mall would shovel those off. Is that, they were not contemplated when the agreement was made on plowing the sidewalk?
Actually,
I don't know.
the stairs were part of the concept during those discussions. I cannot say specifically if there was a detailed discussion about how do you clear the stairs, as I was not the one having those discussions. One of the alternatives, and this is something that we do currently with stair systems that we maintain, is something similar to what the University of Idaho does. There are certain stairs in the winter that we just close off. And this potentially could be one of those if there was some concern on the part of the mall about clearing those, just not having the time or whatever it may be. That is an alternative. We would probably need to talk to the mall folks a little bit about the stairs a little further as to whether or not they would include that as part of their typical snow removal, or if it would be better in those situations to perhaps close them off. Obviously, if you do that, then it kind of puts us back in the position as if you didn't have a set of stairs, at least for limited periods of time.
You've got two hands that way, Mayor.
Yeah.
Tim?
Thank you. Well, I look at the overall bid from Curtis at almost 50,000, and when you look at alternate number 2, it's $22,444. Kind of adds a gigantic chunk of change to the overall project, and kind of scares one. But it sounds to me like, and it's staff is recommending that we do alternative 2. I look at the almost $9,000 for a set of stairs, and I think that's the least cost of the whole project. And yet seems to be the most practical part of the whole project. We got an existing sidewalk that terminates at the hill with, I don't know how many stairs there are, 6 or 8 steps down to the Hatley Way level. It just seems pretty much commonsensical to put the stairs in now, and I guess bite the bullet and do alternative too. So I'm going to support staff's recommendation.
Do you want to make a motion to that effect?
There's lots of hands up. We've got a lot of time for that, I think.
Sue?
Oh, I still had a question about developer participation agreements. So if some of the money for alternative two comes from developer participation agreements, is this money that developers paid to put sidewalks in other parts of town?
No,
That is now being diverted to here, or where does that come from?
the developer participation line in our budget is city funding. And it is money that is put aside in water, sewer, and street funds for capital-related work that the city will take on when a development is occurring or some kind of developer improvement is occurring. The most common one we see is, for instance, a water line. A development comes in, they need an 8-inch water line to provide water to their property. The city says, that's great, but we want to be able to extend higher volumes of water through the development to future developments further on. So the city will pay an oversize cost, the difference between an 8-inch and a 12-inch, out of developer participation. On the street side, it's most typically related to things like storm drainage improvements. So, for instance, a good example was the Blackwood addition up on the first 90 degree on Mountain View. And the development put in sidewalks along the north side of Mountain View on that east-west stretch. Just outside of their frontage, we had drainage issues. And the addition of sidewalks and curb and gutter up there created some problems or made the problems worse than they were. So as part of that project, the city participated with developer participation funds, put in some additional drainage structures and piping underground to resolve an existing problem while development was occurring. So it's really that type of approach. And on this particular project, the developer participation funds we've identified really relate to what's going on out here on the street, okay, where we're removing and replacing some of this poor condition concrete roadway system to improve the surface, but also to resolve some drainage problems that, you know, become more apparent as this type of sidewalk and curb and gutter work goes in place.
So we're not stealing from another development?
No, these are all just city funds that we use to enhance or improve existing city infrastructure when a development project is happening in the area.
Okay. Well, I've seen, I walk out there every week for about 4 years, and I have only ever seen a van with a flat tire that sat there for 2 years in those parking spaces, and a huge pile of snow, plus the delivery trucks to Office Depot.
In these parking spaces.
You're talking in the asphalt.
In those parking spaces. So I don't have any fear about people parking there to go to U-Haul. U-Haul has plenty of parking. Or even employees for Office Depot. Like I said, I walk it all the time. So if there isn't any other discussion, I would move that we do the original plan plus alternate 2 and leave out the stairs.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. We have Sue's motion and Dan's second. Further discussion. Wayne?
Borrow your pen, Walter, if I could. Les, what kind of condition are these current sidewalks in that are here?
They're not too great. The walk that's really between what was the Montgomery driveway and the first U-Haul entrance is probably in the worst condition of this existing walk stretch. And the ramps that are here are, in fact, this one's actually broken, as I recall. This one's better, but neither one of these are compliant with today's standards, and even 10 years ago they were probably not too great at that time. So
Back to your other picture, if you would.
Mhm.